Welcome to another episode of Hackers, Misadventures, and Scale Modeling Feature Fridays. Happy 2024, the year that's supposed to change everything and be better. We shall see. Anyways, now the kids are back in school and I got peace and quiet around here. I can do some recording. Now, 2024 is significant for us aircraft modelers this year, especially in Canada, is that this is the year, it's the 100th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Air Force. So majority of my videos this year will be about the Royal Canadian Air Force and its aircraft. And I'm going to try to stick to aircraft that are Canadian Pacific. Now I'm going to do one on the CL-13 Sabre, the Canadair-built version of the North American Sabre jet, and other things like the Argus and the Yukon, maybe the North Star, the Tudor. Of course, the Canadian-made, two or three Canadian-made planes, the CF-100 Canuck and the CF-100 Arrow, CF-105 Arrow. So, but first we're going to go into a little bit of history of the Royal Canadian Air Force, and we'll start it off with that. So, I got a video here by the Wilfrid Laurier University History Department. Now, how accurate and good it is, I don't know, but we'll have a review and talk about it. So without further ado, we shall get on with the video. So here we go. I have my coffee, by the way.
The Royal Canadian Air Force was established in 1924. In its early history, the RCAF had low enlistment numbers and therefore had difficulty sustaining itself. However, in 1939, the RCAF was given the opportunity to contribute to the war effort on a large scale. On the 26th of September 1939, the British government proposed the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan to the Canadian government. The participation in this plan would eventually be considered Canada's greatest contribution to the Second World War. The plan's goal was to train aircrew away from active warfare and to produce an endless stream of airmen to replace those currently serving overseas.
The British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, which transformed Canada's role in the war in terms of the preparation of aircrew, not only pilots.
Sorry about the video quality.
But in addition, Canada supplied 25% of all the crew for RAF Bomber Command.
Canada signed the plan on the 17th of December 1939, along with Australia and New Zealand. Canada was chosen as the central training area due to the fact that it was close to Britain, it had potential to manufacture aircraft, and could use the resources available from the United States. As a central component for the plan, Canada was required to shoulder much of the cost, most of which went towards building runways and buildings, such as the initial, elementary, and service flying schools where pilots were trained. Classes officially began on the 29th of April, 1940, often referred to as Zero Day. The positions that Canadian graduates were trained for were as pilots, navigators, air bombers, wireless operators, air gunners, and flight engineers.
I think that it's impossible, given the way in which the war evolved, not to have an enormous focus on some of the most dramatic land battles of the war. It's very hard to write air history. So much of it is in a sense, routine and repetitive.
Throughout the war, interest in the air training plan continued to grow. In July of 1941, the RCAF established the Women's Division on the suggestion of the British. This gave women an opportunity to serve outside of the standard women professions such as nursing. Women were recruited by using the appeal of patriotism, adventure, and the idea that they were supporting male family members who were already serving in the RCAF.
I would argue that what women in entering the RCAF auxiliary allowed for is allowed a higher proportion of the best available male volunteers.
I'm going to see when I edit this video if I can up the volume on that guy speaking, because it's very bad during the initial making of this video, so recording of this video. So I'm going to try. If I can't, then you're going to have to listen very hard. I don't know how they managed to not have it set up properly. But anyways, back to where we were.
Women played in the Air Force was initially administrative. Over time, they worked on air-ground communication and plotted RCAF and enemy planes both in Canada and overseas. One woman who served was Jean Lee. She was the only Chinese-Canadian woman to serve in the RCAF Women's Division from 1942 to 1945. The inclusion of women led to other minorities being recruited into the RCAF. The RCAF gave families the opportunity to support themselves by making a good salary alongside an allowance for their dependents. The issue was that many racial minorities were barred from enlisting and receiving these benefits. As the war progressed, however, the Canadian military required more men to supply reinforcements to a towering overseas force. Thus, the discrimination against Aboriginal, Chinese, and Black Canadians was overlooked in favor of enlisting the needed amount of manpower. Beginning in 1941, the RCAF gave Native Americans the opportunity to enlist, eventually followed by Asian Canadians in 1942. Overseas, many Chinese Canadians worked in the field offices because new British policies barred the government from denying minorities the right to enlist. Black Canadians were finally allowed to enlist in 1943. However, once the war was ended, there were few gains in terms of social equality for these minorities. After completing
Which is a
training
shame.
in Canada, most graduates were shipped overseas to complete their commitment to the air training plan. Initially, there were no squadrons specifically assigned to the Commonwealth countries, despite their presence in every squadron. In 1942, the RAF established the No. 6 Group, which was part of Bomber Command and formed completely of Canadian airmen, numbering approximately 5,700.
Canada would contribute such a large element to the Bomber Command that it had to have an identifiable group in which Canadian officers could be promoted above the level of wing commander.
This was a fulfillment of Article 15 of the Air Training Plan, which stated that the Dominions would be given their own presence while serving under the RAF. As part of Bomber Command, Canadians were a part of the strategic bombing of Germany. British officers believed this would end the war by halting production in industrial cities and weakening the German morale.
Canadian pilots and aircrew remained a vital part of RAF squadron throughout the entire war. The Canadians became one of the principal parts of the Tactical Air Force, so much so that on D-Day, more than 50% of the planes in the sky above the beaches in Normandy, in the Canadian and British sector, were from RCAF squadrons.
Planes commonly used for these enterprises were the Halifax and Lancaster bombers, which held crews of 4 to 7 members. These flights had great risk, and many air crews were downed throughout the course of the war.
The air story ought to be much larger in our consciousness than it is, and I guess the reason it isn't is because it was so thoroughly integrated with the RAF.
By the end of the war, the RCAF had managed to graduate 131,553 recruits from the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, and draw from a wider pool of enlistments to prove itself as a powerful force that had gained an immeasurable amount of maturity.
Oop, screwed up there. Sorry, guys. Just to let you know, I forget what year it was. Wasn't it that long ago? The British has a flying Lancaster, And we in Canada has a flying Lancaster, not too far from here, at the Canadian Warplane Heritage. They spend a lot of years restoring that aircraft when it was just a pedestal aircraft. But anyways, on the anniversary, I think it was the 70th anniversary of the Dam Busters raid in Germany, the Canadian Lancaster was invited over to England, and they flew it all the way over there. They sort of went, I think they flew from here to Newfoundland, and they flew to Greenland and then over to England. Now, while they were over there, they lost one of their engines went, and the Royal Air Force Museum gladly traded them an engine. They took the busted engine and fixed it, and gave the Canadians a new Merlin for their aircraft. I don't know what story after that was, but then they flew down the two Lancasters on the day of the raid, on the day of the anniversary of the raid, flew down to Rural and over the dam. And it was the first time since World War II that there was more than one Lancaster in the British air space. So I'm pretty proud of our guys. Anyways, on with the story. Okay, so just to add to that, I'm going to throw in a video on the British Commonwealth Air Training Program. So this is a video, like, we should be proud as Canadians, because not only did we train British, we trained Norwegian, we trained Americans, we trained a lot of people. And we should be celebrating that. But, you know, politics is what it is. Anyways, let's watch this program by the Canadian government on the subject.
Over the shores of Kent they came, over the beaches of Sussex and the flats of the Thames estuary, 100, 150, 200 at a time, with their cargoes of bomb and fire and their fighter escorts massed around them.
Where do you train aircrew when Britain is already involved in the conflict? It's not a very good place to be learning to fly when you might have a fighter on your tail in any moment. They looked at where would we do this, and it made sense. Canada has the American technological market immediately south of us. We've got all the natural resources and wide open spaces, and we're not a combat zone. It made perfect sense to do it here. They started building this base in 1940. The hangar that we're standing in was completed over the winter of 1940-41. And this base with 5 hangars and all the infrastructure, barracks, H-huts, the hospital, everything was ready to go in May 1941. And this is just one of schools right across the country. .701 of these hangars were prefabbed in BC, brought to the sites by rail and erected in that short period of time. And right now, if you travel across the country, most of the commercial airports you'd fly to were built originally as BCATP bases.
That's true. We got one right outside where I live.
Imagine what that did to a small prairie town or anywhere. All of a sudden you've got, as this base was, 50 buildings, 5 of them great big hangars, and all that taking place, employing everybody for miles around. It changed the country. Everybody had work.
Well, the first thing I would like to say, I was no hero. I was just an ordinary Joe doing what had to be done when it had to be done. I was a flying instructor. Nobody wanted to be a flying instructor. Nobody chose to do that, but you did what you were told to do where you were told to do it. So I spent most of my wartime career at different places, but a lot of it here at Brandon No. 12 Service Flying Training School, training supposedly bomber pilots. And you started up your motors. And you taxied out to the end of the runway, and you were still on the taxi strip. You run up your motors and you checked your mags and etc. And then you took off with whatever sequence you were going to be doing. What would you do in the air? Well, you could fly any directions you wished that wasn't in a restricted area. And you started out just familiarizing your student with the flight. Of course, they were familiarized with the cockpit first, and then you'd do some just ordinary level flying, and then a few slider maneuvers going into turns and steep turns and whatnot. And then you would have them with their hands on the controls, their do controls, and they would follow through on everything that you were doing until they were comfortable with it, and then you would turn it over to them, making very sure that you knew who was control.
The women that were pilots, and there were a few of them, were mostly ferry command pilots. And what they would do is deliver aircraft, pick aircraft up from one place, deliver them to another place, deliver them from the factories or service depots to active fields. So they would be able to fly almost any type of aircraft and most anywhere in the country. Currently, we have 5 of these aircraft that are runnable, that are airworthy, that can fly. The cars and trucks you see around are period pieces that served in the plan. Every aircraft, whether it's an airliner or a private aircraft, needs to have an annual inspection done on it, and that's what's going on with them.
I was going to say that Harvard's There is no mistaking Harvard. There's a place not too far from here. I don't know if it's still around or not, but you see Harvards, you used to see Harvards, like 5 of them fly over. And you could hear them coming from miles. And you could say, that's a Harvard. And, well, what can you say? They were Harvards.
Why its panels are removed. That we measure the compression, make all the adjustments, look for wear, tear, and damage, and basically give it a medical each year. It looks like a jumble, but actually there's a complete Yale airplane in here other than the fuselage and the wings. There's parts of Ferry Battle, there's parts of Lysander's, things like this engine under here that's in a pretty decent shape. There's engines from Tiger Moths, there's engines from Cessna Cranes. The problem is to know what each of the parts are and keep track of them. Well, what are archives? The archives are the raw material for telling the story. And as we keep our aircraft operational and as we try and repair other ones, this is the raw material. This is where it comes from.
I have a lot of regrets because I wanted to fly Mosquitoes very badly. That was my choice of an aircraft. An awful lot of people, it was their choice would be Spitfires, but Spitfires were the glory aircraft. But Mosquitoes were the fastest and most versatile aircraft we had during World War II. A bad night in Bomber Command, if there was, this is the worst nights possibly, with 1,000 planes raid out, lose a 10% loss, and that was 100 aircraft down, 7 boys in each one of them, 700 killed in one night, night after night. And, you know, we knew it was happening, but civilian people didn't know that was happening night after night. And that was one of the things that it was on your mind, because these were boys that you had trained. Not all of them by any means, but those are the boys that you had trained to go there and whatnot. And
there are 18,039 names out there of young men and women, mostly men, but some women, who were wearing the RCAF uniform when they perished, between when the war broke out in 1939 to when it ended in 45. Archie taught some of those young guys whose names are on the wall, and that's his generation out there.
I'm looking for Al Quantrill, who is right up here, who was my roommate, and one of the toughest jobs I did during the war was gathering up his belongings to send home to a 20-year-old widow. And excuse me if I get a bit emotional, but that is, there are many names on here of friends, that boys I went to school with and flew with, but that one hits me more than any of them. Just to think of she was probably pregnant at the time as well, and he would never have seen any of his family, and a 20-year-old is an awful young person to be a widow.
Dangerous business.
As a father, I walk down that wall and I look at the names and I look at the ages when they passed. And that's the ages of my sons, and it's a really difficult thing to think of the sacrifice and yet the colossal waste at the same time. Just think, every one of those people had a family, a life, a favorite spot in the world. You know,
If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have what we have today.
they deserve to be recognized. That's why the wall's out there. So I look at the gift of life we as Canadians have and the style of life we have, and I think it's worth preserving, and it's worth understanding how we got here as a nation. And this is a big part of it to me.
Without their sacrifice, none of us would be doing what we're doing today.
I think as we go forward, if we can keep the place alive and viable and active, and I don't know, you may have noticed today there was a bunch of younger people walking through here, if we can pique their interest somehow. And I think the biggest catch is to get them to realize that they can contribute. You know, it's possible. You don't have to stand back and hands in your pockets and do nothing. But it's up to us who are here already, who have gone before, to encourage the next generation to step up.
Something to be proud of, I think. It's the hardest part listening to this is looking at the names. You know, not to tote or toot anything here, but, you know, we tend to forget those who went before us. People like my father, who served in the Royal Canadian Navy on a Corvette in the middle of the North Atlantic, fighting U-boats and other people. I had an uncle who was my mother's brother-in-law. He served in the Royal Canadian Air Force. My mother's brother, he served in the British Army, in the Canadian Army. So we have to stop and thank these guys every November. And same as you guys down in the States or Britain, when you have your so-called Remembrance Days or Veterans Day, remember these people. They went when they were asked to, regardless if they agreed with it or not. Okay? Anyways, we'll get on with, I will sort out in a bit. I'll add to this video in a bit. I gotta look up the different aircraft that was mentioned in the last video about the British Commonwealth Air Training Program and find out if there's models of the Cornell and stuff like that for you. So I'll be right back. So, as for models for these planes, I'm only doing the trainers, okay? So I'm not doing the bigger two-engine bombers and stuff they use for training. I'm just doing the primary trainers, okay? So the first one up is Airspeed Oxford. Now, there's only 2 of these in four in 1/72nd scale. First, you have the venerable Frog kit, which was reproduced by Nova later on. Now, the next kit, which I think it's the same kit, was done by Tasman. But I believe that the AC one, that's a newer model, should have a better interior. I will have to look up the interior for you and post it on here. Now, in 1/48 scale, which is the scale I'm going to try to build these planes in for my interest, is the Special Hobby one. And from what I understand, it's a very good model. They've done a good job on that one. Now, next one up on my list is the Avro Anson. Now, there's only 3 models of this in 1/72nd scale. No, sorry, 2. We have the old Airfix kit, which I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if this was a new one or an old one. I think it's an old one, but I wouldn't be surprised if Airfix along the line, since they did 1/48 scale one, will replace it with a new mold. And the other one that should be good is the Special Hobbies kit in 1/72nd scale. In 1/48 scale, we only have two. Classic airframes came up with one in 1/48 scale before, and I think it's a fairly decent model. I'll have to put, again, as I'm doing this, if I find some pictures of the kit layout, I will give it to you. And the excellent Airfix one. People have been raving about this one, and I got to get one and do a kit review. It's hard right now to do stuff because I'm working. Anyways, next is the Stearman. Now it's under Boeing Stearman. We have two, one by Revell and one by Paula. Now I know the Revell one, I built that one. It's just basically the 60 style where you just got two seats, a guy and a stick. The Paula one should be better. They usually give you a decent interior. In 1/48 scale, we have the Revell kit, which is an excellent kit. I've seen that one. I've been planning to build two of these. My wife's from the Philippines, and I want to do a Philippines Air Force one. Or at the time, it was called the Philippine Army Air Corps. They followed the seats. And we have the Lindbergh one, which generally it's an accurate and nice kit, but it lacks interior. If you have a set of plans, or even if you have a set of plans, you could probably scratch build the interior, and there's enough aftermarket parts that you could probably shoehorn some of those into it as well and make a decent model out of it. In 1/32 scale, we got three. Rodin put out a 1/32 scale one. That's good. An ICM put out one that's also a very good kit. I plan to build one of those. I like these biplanes. Don't mind me. Now, Revell's got a 1/32 scale, but I'm not sure which company, because they rebox a lot of other company stuff. And I'm not too sure if it's a rebox of the ICM kit, which I'm leaning towards it is, or if it's the Rodin kit. I will put a little blurb in this video to tell you whether it is or isn't. Now, a Cessna crane. Now, there is no 1/32 scale for a Cessna crane as of yet. In the future, who knows? We've been getting a lot of 1/32 scale stuff and that. So the only one is 1/72 scale is the KP model, as far as I know. If I find another one, I'll throw the image of the kit up too. Now 1/48 scale, the only one that you can get at the moment is the Squadron Signal Encore kit. It says it's a Bobcat, but the crane and the Bobcat's the same thing. It's the same plane. It's just that the British called it a crane and the Americans called it a Bobcat. But with any luck, Dora Wings had announced that they're doing a 1/48 scale Cessna crane, so, or a Bobcat. So I'm going to put up the 3D images of that just to show you what they're up to. Now, the next one on my list is our favorite, the de Havilland 82 Tiger Moth. Now, in 1/72 scale, we have the old Aero Club kit, which is pretty basic from my understanding. So is the, now Airfix, I think the 1/72 scale kit is a new one. I'm pretty sure it is. And it's not too bad for 1/72 scale. AC has done one. And it comes in a couple of flavors. And it's fine. And ICM or KP did one too. Now, I'm going to post a picture of a real Canadian Tiger Moth just to show you that you're going to have to modify it and put a canopy on it. There's no way around it. That's the way it was done that way because we have extremely cold winters. So it was for the protection of the pilot and the trainee. Okay, in 1/48 scale we have the SMER kit that's been out. I'm not too sure who was the original molder of that kit or whether it was SMER themselves. I have to look it up, and I'll post a blurb in that too to let you know. Then we have the excellent Airfix kit. Airfix has done a wonderful job in 1/48 scale on that kit, and I've seen excellent builds on that. But again, you're going to have to find a conversion set to put the canopy on it. I'm pretty sure somebody has it. I'll look it up and see what I can find. Now, 1/32 scale, we have the Matchbox kit. Now, it's a good kit. Comes with a full engine. I've built it. Now, the only thing is it lacks interior. It lacks the structural frame of the fuselage, and the interior is not quite right. So you're going to have to scratch build that. But it does come with the proper canopy. Now, which brings us to the ICM kit. Now, they don't have the proper canopy, but if you could find somebody that's got the Matchbox canopy and they're not using it, maybe you can shoehorn it on there and turn it into a Canadian model. Now, the Fairchild Cornet. Now, just to let you know, 1/72 scale, there's only two kits. The Planet Model kit that first came out, and then Special Hobbies put one out. There is no 1/42 scale kit, and there's no 1/48 scale kit, and there's no 1/32 scale kit. Sorry about that. Now we'll get into the Fleet aircraft. Now, Fleet aircraft are a domestic Canadian manufacturer of the next two planes. They're strictly designed and built in Canada. Nobody else had them. So there's only two models of the Fleet Fitch. One is by Planet Models, which comes again with the proper winter canopy, and the Azure kit. The Azure kit should be better than the Planet Model kits, but I'll see if I can find some interior shots of these, some shots of the sprues and let you see it. There is no 1/48 scale and there's no 1/32 scale. Now the Fleet Fort. I'll have to put up an actual picture of this from the Warplane Heritage that I took. I have to dig through my stuff to find it, but I have one. There's only one kit made. It was a vacuum form by Airframe. That's it. There's no other kits. Now for the North American Harbor. Now there's models in all three scales for this one. In 1/72 scale we have the Airfix kit, which I'm not too sure if it's their own or the Heller kit. Hobby Boss made their own kit, and Special Hobbies has done one, and Revell's done one, which I don't know which one the Revell kit is, but out of the three, if the Airfix one is the same as the Heller kit and the Revell one's the same as the Heller kit, it's a good model. It needs some extra scratch building inside to bring the interior up to snuff, but it's a good model. I've had one of those. I've had a look at it. It's not bad. But I suspect, and I'm going to look for again, I'll post it up. I'll check out the Special Hobby one and see what the sprues look like for that. In 1/48 scale, we got two. We have the Italia Airy kit, which is another. It's actually a mold that they bought from somebody else. A company called Occidental. They went under and Atelieri bought the molds. And we have the Heller kit as well, which I might be the same kit. I'm not too sure. Anyways, in 1/32 scale, you have the Kitty Hawk kit. Now, that's an excellent kit. I've seen that one. Being Kitty Hawk, I think there was a couple of fit issues, but nothing you can't handle. Now, right now, Kitty Hawk has gone under and has been bought by somebody else. So when this kit comes out, I have no idea or under whose name it will be under. But keep your eyes open. Now, for the North American Yale. Now, there's only one model in 72nd scale, and that's by RS Models. I've got pictures of what it looks like, and it doesn't look bad. But 1/48 scale, the only thing you can do is do a conversion of a 1/48 scale, and you get that conversion from Belcher bits. I'll post up the parts and what looks like on a model. Now, I'm surprised Belcher bits hasn't done upped it one and did it in 32nd scale to go with the Kitty Hawk kit, but maybe they're waiting to see if the kit will come out again or not. I don't know. But that's pretty much it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video, and please remember to subscribe to my channel and punch that like button. You also can donate to my channel through my PayPal, which is on the main page of my channel, and you also can donate through Patreon. So, as always, every build is an adventure, so go make it awesome, and we'll see you again later, and you have a good day. Goodbye.